The courier's knock was sharp. 3 quick raps that echoed the frantic beat of my own heart. I knew, even before I saw the official-looking envelope, that it wasn't good news. My ex-husband, Davis, specialised in delivering misery by registered mail. My name is Hannah. And for the past 6 months, since the ink dried on divorce papers that felt more like a parole agreement, my life has been a relentless battle for my children, Thomas and Marley. Davis, a man who could charm a snake out of its skin in public and then crush it underfoot in private, was trying to take them from me. He had the money, the connections, and an apparently bottomless well of malice. I tore open the envelope, my hands shaking. Petition to modify custody. The words swam before my eyes. He was claiming I was unstable, an unfit mother. My breath hitched. Then I saw the supporting declarations. Vague accusations, twisted half-truths, all painting me as a hysterical wreck. But it was the phrasing, certain specific criticisms. They sounded chillingly familiar. Like snippets of conversations I'd had in confidence, anxieties I'd shared not with Davis but with my own family, my mother, Naomi, my father, Reuben, even my brother, Dalton. A cold dread, sharp and painful, pierced through the initial shock. Surely not. They wouldn't. I needed to see them, to look them in the eyes. I called my mother. Mum, can I come over for dinner tonight with the kids? I need to talk to you all. Her voice was cooler than usual. Oh, Hannah, tonight is a bit difficult. Reuben and I had plans. Please, Mom, I begged, the words catching in my throat. It's important. It's about the kids. A sigh. All right, fine. But don't make it a late one. And try to be calm. Calm. As if I was the one perpetually on the verge of an explosion. The dinner was a disaster from the moment we walked in. Thomas, my 8-year-old, usually so boisterous, clung to my leg. 6-year-old Marley just stared at her grandparents with wide, uncertain eyes. The air in my parents' overly pristine living room was thick with unspoken things. My father, Reuben, fiddled with his new, ostentatiously expensive-looking watch, avoiding my gaze. Dalton slumped on the sofa, scrolling through his phone, offering only a grunt of greeting. So, Naomi began, her voice brittle as she placed a bowl of aggressively bland pasta on the table. What's this urgent matter, Hannah? I tried to keep my voice even. I received new papers from Davis today. He's making some awful accusations. He's trying to say I'm unstable. Reuben finally looked up, a carefully neutral expression on his face. Well, Hannah, you've been under a lot of stress. Divorce is hard on everyone. Stress? I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. He's lying, Dad. He's twisting things, and some of the things he's saying, they sound like things I've only ever told you. Or Mom. Naomi bristled. Are you accusing us of something, Hannah? We would never do anything to hurt you or the children. But her eyes didn't quite meet mine. Dalton snorted from the sofa, not even looking up. Davis always seemed pretty reasonable to me. Maybe you should just listen to what he's offering. Offering? I stared at him. He's offering to take my children, Dalton, based on lies. Now, Hannah, don't get hysterical, Naomi said, her tone sharp. Dalton has a point. Sometimes it's better to find a compromise. A compromise that involves me losing my kids. My chest felt tight, like a band was constricting around it. I looked from one unyielding face to another, my father staring at his plate, my brother, indifferent, my mother, her expression hardening. This wasn't a plea for support. It was an interrogation, and I was already judged guilty. They're my children, I whispered, a desperate plea. Don't you care? My mother patted my hand, a gesture devoid of any warmth. Her rings, newer and flashier than I remembered, glinted under the dining room light. Of course we care, dear, but you have to be practical. Davis has resources. He can provide for them in ways you currently can't. The implication hung in the air, suffocating me, that I was a failure, incapable. He's abusive, Mum, I said, my voice trembling. You know what he was like. Naomi waved a dismissive hand. Oh, Hannah, you always were a bit dramatic. Every marriage has its ups and downs. Davis just wants what's best, and he's been very generous in ensuring everyone is taken care of. I froze. Generous? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What? What does that mean, Mom? Generous to whom? She looked flustered for a split second, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes before her carefully composed mask slipped back into place. Just generous. He's a successful man, Hannah. He understands the importance of family. But her words, ensuring everyone is taken care of, echoed in my mind, cold and terrifying. Taken care of how? And at what cost to me and my children? The pasta on my plate suddenly looked like a pile of worms. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that this was far worse than I could have ever imagined. Generous. The word clung to me like a shroud as I drove away from my parents' house, Thomas and Marley blessedly asleep in the back seat. Ensuring everyone is taken care of. It wasn't just a casual remark. It was a confession, veiled in maternal condescension. The moment I got the kids into bed, I called Livia, my voice tight with unshed tears and a burgeoning, sickening anger. Liv, you won't believe what my mother just said. Knowing Naomi? Try me. Livia's voice, calm and steady, was an anchor. I recounted the dinner, Naomi's chilling words, Reuben's avoidance, Dalton's dismissiveness. She said Davis has been generous, that he's ensuring everyone is taken care of. What does that mean, Liv? What the hell does that mean? It means trouble, Han, Livia said, her voice grim. It means they're not just passively on his side. It sounds like they're actively benefiting. A cold knot formed in my stomach. You think he's paying them? Given Davis's methods and your family's appreciation for financial comfort, it's not a stretch, Livia said gently. We need to look. Social media, any shared accounts, old email addresses you guys might have used for family stuff, anything. The next few days were a descent into a digital rabbit hole fueled by coffee and a growing sense of dread. Livia came over every evening after work. We sat side by side on my sofa, laptops open, scrolling, searching. It started subtly. A new designer handbag Naomi had posted a picture of just last week. A little treat for myself, the caption read. Reuben tagged in a photo at a golf course I knew he couldn't afford the membership for. Dalton showing off a new gaming console that cost a fortune. Small things, perhaps, but the timing, coinciding with Davis escalating the custody battle, felt too convenient. It's circumstantial, I muttered, trying to convince myself. Keep digging, Livia urged. Her eyes narrowed in concentration. People get careless. She was right. The carelessness came in the form of an old, rarely used family email account, one we'd set up years ago for sharing holiday photos. I'd almost forgotten the password. When I finally logged in, my heart hammered against my ribs. There, nestled amongst spam and ancient newsletters, was a forwarded email chain. The subject line, custody support and future planning. My breath caught. The sender was my father, Reuben, the recipient, Davis, and CCD, my mother and Dalton. Oh my God, Liv, look at this, I whispered, my voice hoarse. Livia leaned closer, reading over my shoulder. The emails detailed discussions about ongoing financial support, from Davis to my parents and Dalton. In return, they were to provide their full cooperation and testimony regarding my parenting suitability. There were mentions of lump sums upon successful resolution and assistance with outstanding debts. They were selling me out. They were selling my children's happiness, their stability for Davis's blood money. The betrayal was so profound, so complete, it left me breathless. They wouldn't just lie, I'd told Livia, a desperate hope in my voice only days before. Now the proof was stark, undeniable. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Another courier. This time the envelope was thicker. I knew what it was before I opened it. The official affidavit supporting Davis's petition. I spread them on the coffee table, my hands trembling so violently I could barely hold them. There they were, my mother's signature, bold and unwavering, at the bottom of a statement filled with fabricated incidents of my neglect and emotional outbursts. My father's, slightly more hesitant but still damning, attesting to my irresponsibility and lack of maternal instinct. And Dalton's, a scrawled mess, backing up their claims, adding his own observations about my unsuitability. Each word was a fresh stab, each signature a final twist of the knife. Livia put a comforting arm around my shoulders. I'm so sorry, Han. Tears streamed down my face, hot and angry. The devastation was quickly being replaced by a cold, hard fury. My own family. How could they? My phone buzzed, Dalton's name flashing on the screen. I stared at it. Then, steeling myself, I answered. What do you want, Dalton? His voice was strained, almost a whisper. Hannah, look, just give him what he wants. It's easier this way, for everyone. Easier for whom, Dalton? I spat back, the fury making my voice shake. Easier for you to cash his checks? You don't understand, he said, a note of panic creeping in. You don't know what he's promised. Suddenly, I heard Naomi's sharp voice in the background. Dalton! Who are you talking to? Give me that phone! The line went dead. Promised? What had Davis promised them that was worth destroying their own daughter, their own sister? The question hung in the air, heavy and ominous. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about something far bigger and far more sinister. Easier for whom, Dalton? I screamed into the dead phone, the silence on the other end a mocking echo of my own family's betrayal. My hand clenched the phone so tightly I thought it might crack. Promised what? What could Davis possibly offer them that would make them tear me apart, lie under oath, and try to rip my children from me? Livia gently took the phone from my trembling fingers. Hannah, breathe. But I couldn't breathe. The air was thick with their treachery. It wasn't just pocket money Davis was dangling, not for this level of commitment to my destruction. He must have promised them fortunes, a life of luxury built on the ruins of mine. The vision of them all, my parents and Dalton, enriched and comfortable while my world crumbled, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. They weren't just complicit. They were active, eager participants in my downfall. I paced my small living room, the signed affidavits, a poisonous stain on my coffee table. Despair threatened to swallow me whole, my own blood, bought and paid for. Then, a flicker. A memory, hazy at first, then sharpening into focus. My grandmother, my father's mother, a woman of formidable will and even more formidable disdain for Davis. She'd seen his true colours long before I had, and she'd never minced words about my parents' obsession with appearances and money. Years ago, before she passed, she'd sat me down. Hannah, she'd said, her eyes sharp and knowing. Your parents are good people in some ways, but money can make fools of the best of us. I've made some arrangements. For you, for your future. The Thornton Family Heritage Trust, that's what she'd called it. A substantial fund built over generations. I'd been a young adult then, not really paying close attention to the details, more concerned with university and my burgeoning disastrous relationship with Davis. But one detail surfaced now, crystal clear. My grandmother, in her infinite wisdom and foresight, had stipulated that I, Hannah, would become the sole administrator of the trust upon my 30th birthday. Not my parents, not Reuben, her own son, whom she loved but didn't entirely trust with finances. Me. She'd cited my sound judgment and steady character. My 30th birthday had come and gone 3 years ago. In the chaos of my marriage to Davis, then the divorce, the trust had become a forgotten detail, a dusty file in the back of my mind. My parents, I realised with a jolt, had probably forgotten too. Or more likely, they'd conveniently overlooked who actually held the purse strings to a significant portion of the lifestyle they so clearly craved. They were so focused on Davis's promises, on the money he was flashing, that they hadn't considered the bedrock of their existing comfort. Livia, I said, my voice suddenly calm, a strange new resolve hardening within me. Grandmama. The trust fund. Livia looked up, intrigued. What about it? She made me the sole administrator when I turned 30, I explained, the pieces clicking into place with a satisfying thud. They're all beneficiaries, yes. My parents, Dalton. They get regular disbursements, but I control it. I control it. A slow understanding dawned on Livia's face. You're kidding me? They're trying to destroy you while you hold the keys to their kingdom? They forgot, I said, a humourless laugh escaping me. Or they just assumed it didn't matter, that Davis's money was bigger, better. I needed to be sure. The next morning, I made a discreet call to the law firm that managed the trust. My voice was carefully neutral as I requested clarification on the administrative terms. The lawyer, a Mr. Henderson, was polite and efficient. He confirmed everything. Sole administrator, full discretion. Then I asked another question, a chilling thought having occurred to me overnight. Mr. Henderson, hypothetically, if someone were trying to gain control of my personal assets through, say, a contentious divorce and custody battle, would the trust be vulnerable? Not directly, Ms. Thornton, he replied. The trust is structured to protect its assets. However, he paused. Are you aware of any discussions Mr. Miller might have had with other beneficiaries regarding your personal financial situation? What kind of discussions? I pressed. Well, he said, choosing his words carefully, it has come to my attention through informal channels, a conversation overheard at a club, if you will, that Mr. Miller may have led certain parties to believe that upon a favourable outcome in your current legal proceedings, he would gain access not only to marital assets but also to your perceived personal wealth, which he would then be inclined to share generously. My blood ran cold. Davis hadn't just promised them his money, he dangled the prospect of my money too. Money they wrongly assumed I had stashed away, separate from the trust. They weren't just betting on his victory, they were betting on my complete and utter financial ruin, hoping to pick the bones clean. Their greed knew no bounds. I thanked Mr. Henderson and hung up, a cold, hard knot of determination solidifying in my chest. I walked over to my filing cabinet and pulled out the thick folder labelled Thornton Family Heritage Trust. The legal jargon was dense, but one phrase leaped out, clear and unambiguous. Sole discretion and administrative power vested in Hannah Thornton. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just found a very large, very sharp weapon. They forgot about Grandmama's wisdom, didn't they? I murmured to the empty room. They had no idea what was coming. The smile stayed on my face, a grim, determined curve of my lips, as I picked up the phone. Livia had given me a name weeks ago when Davis first started his smear campaign. Phoebe Woods, she'd said. She's a shark, Hannah, the kind you want on your side, not circling your lifeboat. At the time, I'd hesitated, intimidated by the reputation and the potential cost. Now cost was no object. Justice was the only currency that mattered. Phoebe's office was sleek, modern, and exuded an air of quiet, lethal competence, just like the woman herself. She listened intently as I laid it all out. Davis's escalating abuse, the lies he was spinning, the custody battle hanging over me like a guillotine. I showed her the affidavits, my voice tight with suppressed rage, as I pointed to my own family's signatures. Then I told her about the trust fund. Her perfectly arched eyebrow rose a fraction. The Thornton Family Heritage Trust, she repeated, a new glint in her sharp eyes. And you are the sole administrator? Yes, I confirmed, sliding the summary document across her polished desk. My grandmother was a very astute woman. Phoebe scanned the document, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she looked up at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something that looked remarkably like excitement. Hannah, she said, her voice a low purr, this isn't just a shield. This is a bazooka. A surge of adrenaline, cold and powerful, coursed through me. It was the first time in months, maybe years, that I felt a spark of hope, of actual power. So, what do we do? I asked, leaning forward. We do several things very carefully and very strategically, Phoebe said, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on the trust document. Phase 1. We gather irrefutable evidence, not just of Davis's manipulation, but of your family's active, willing collusion. We need to show they weren't just misled. They were greedy participants. Emails, bank statements showing Davis's generosity, recordings if possible. Anything that paints a clear picture of their motives. I nodded, already thinking about the email chain Livia and I had found. I have a start on that. Good, Phoebe continued. Phase 2. We prepare the legal groundwork to freeze their access to the trust. We don't act on it yet. We wait. We choose our moment for maximum impact, the moment it will cause the most discomfort. A small, almost predatory smile touched her lips. And Davis? I asked, the name like ash in my mouth. Davis, Phoebe said, her smile widening slightly, will be so busy defending himself against your counterclaims, backed by solid evidence of his perjury and attempts to suborn witnesses, your family, that he won't know what hit him. We expose him for the manipulative abuser he is. We ensure those children stay with you, Hannah. And we make him pay in every sense of the word. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could breathe again. The despair that had been crushing me began to recede, replaced by a steely resolve. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a player in this ugly game, and I finally had a winning hand. What about my family? I asked, the word tasting bitter. When do they find out about the trust? They find out when it hurts them the most, Phoebe said, her gaze unwavering. They find out when they're standing in court, having just perjured themselves on Davis's behalf, believing their financial futures are secure. That's when we drop the bomb. The image was so vivid, so satisfying, that I almost laughed. My own mother, so smug and condescending. My father, so weak and entitled. My brother, so easily bought. Their faces when they realised the well had run dry, and that I was the one turning off the tap. I like the way you think, Phoebe, I said. It's what I do best, she replied. Now, let's talk about investigators. We need someone discreet, someone thorough. We spent the next 2 hours mapping out the strategy. Phoebe was meticulous, anticipating Davis's moves, planning counter moves I hadn't even considered. She was everything Livia had promised, sharp, strategic, and utterly ruthless on behalf of her client. As I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in ages, a warrior queen preparing for battle. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humour. That evening, an email from Davis landed in my inbox. The subject line, a fair offer for the children's sake. I opened it, my stomach churning. It was a smirking, condescending proposal. If I agreed to relinquish primary custody and accept minimal visitation, he would graciously not pursue full financial ruin against me. And as a final insult, he added, I will also ensure your family doesn't suffer any further financial hardship on your account, provided you cooperate. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it. He was threatening me with my family's well-being, a family he had already bought and paid for, a family whose true financial lifeline he had no idea I controlled. I stared at the email, a cold fury building inside me. He thought he was so clever, so powerful. He thought he had me backed into a corner. He had no idea. He had absolutely no idea what was coming for him, and for them. I didn't reply. I simply saved the email to the growing evidence folder, a small, almost feral smile playing on my lips. Let him feel confident. Let them all feel secure in their betrayal. Their downfall would be all the more spectacular. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of clandestine activity. Phoebe, true to her word, hired a private investigator named Marcus, a quiet, unassuming man who blended into the background like a shadow but missed nothing. While I focused on my children, maintaining a facade of weary resignation for anyone who might be watching, Marcus and Phoebe were busy weaving the web. Marcus was good. Incredibly good. Within days he had bank statements, not just the ones showing Davis's generous deposits into my parents' and Dalton's accounts, gifts, as Davis had no doubt coached them to call them, but also evidence of Davis's own hidden offshore accounts. Money he'd systematically siphoned off during our marriage, money he'd sworn under oath didn't exist during the divorce settlement. The man was a walking, talking perjury machine. Livia, bless her loyal heart, became my co-conspirator in domestic espionage. Naomi's been on a shopping spree, she reported one evening, scrolling through my mother's ostentatious social media posts. New Italian leather sofa. Just a little something to brighten up the place, she says. And Reuben suddenly developed a taste for vintage wines. Dalton's talking about a down payment on a new sports car. All courtesy of Davis, no doubt, I said, the words like ice. Each purchase was another nail in their coffins. My own moment of evidentiary gold came unexpectedly. I was at a local cafe picking up coffee when I overheard a familiar voice. My mother, Naomi, was holding court at a nearby table with one of her socialite friends, her voice carrying clearly. I slipped my phone out of my bag and discreetly hit record. Eyes and honesty, Carol, Davis is just so much more suitable, Naomi was saying, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Hannah, well, she's always been a bit volatile. Between you and me, it's for the best. The children need stability, and Davis can provide that. He's been incredibly understanding through all this. We'll all be set for life, really, once this unfortunate mess with Hannah is sorted. Set for life. The phrase echoed her earlier generous comment, confirming everything. I saved the recording, a cold satisfaction settling in my gut. It was damning. But Marcus wasn't just digging into Davis's financial manipulations regarding the custody case. He was looking at Davis's entire business empire. Your ex-husband isn't just a bully, Hannah, Marcus told me during a discreet meeting in a quiet park, handing over a slim file. He's playing with fire. The file detailed a series of questionable real estate deals Davis was involved in, shell corporations, inflated property values, transactions that screamed money laundering. This is beyond family court, Marcus said, his expression serious. If this gets into the wrong hands, or rather the right hands, he could be looking at federal charges. My breath caught. This was bigger than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about getting my kids back and cutting off my family. This could utterly destroy Davis. A part of me recoiled at the thought, but a larger, colder part, the part that had endured years of his control and cruelty, felt a grim sense of inevitability. He'd built his empire on lies and manipulation. It was only fitting it would crumble the same way. Then came the twist that made my blood run even colder, if that were possible. Marcus, with a grim set to his jaw, presented his next findings. Davis isn't just promising your family money from these deals, Hannah, he said, his voice low. He's used their names. With their consent, it appears. He laid out documents and corporation papers for some of the shell companies, deeds for suspiciously valued properties. And there they were. Reuben Thornton, Naomi Thornton, Dalton Thornton. Listed as directors, as partners, as straw buyers. They weren't just passive beneficiaries of Davis's dirty money. He'd made them active accomplices in his potentially criminal enterprises. Their greed had made them sign on the dotted line, eager for a piece of a pie that was rotten to the core. They're implicated, I whispered, staring at their signatures. If Davis goes down for this, they could go down with him. Marcus nodded. Potentially. At the very least, they'll face serious investigation. They tied their wagons to his star, not realising it was a falling one. The sheer breathtaking stupidity of it, the depth of their avarice, was almost too much to comprehend. They'd gambled everything, not just their relationship with me and my children, but their own freedom, on Davis's promises. A few days later, the hypocrisy reached a new peak. I was picking up Thomas and Marley from school when my father, Reuben, materialised beside my car. He was wearing a new, expensive-looking watch, one I definitely hadn't bought him, and an expression of deep, paternal concern that was utterly unconvincing. Hannah, he began, his voice smooth and oily, I've been worried about you. About the children. This whole situation with Davis. It's not good for anyone. I just stared at him, my face a mask of stone. You need to be reasonable, darling, he continued, placing a hand on my arm. I resisted the urge to recoil. Think of Thomas and Marley. Sometimes a mother has to make sacrifices for her children. Sacrifices, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. What kind of sacrifices are you talking about, Dad? The kind where I sign away my children so you can keep wearing new watches and playing golf at exclusive clubs? His face flushed. He dropped his hand. That's unfair, Hannah. We just want what's best for everyone. Davis is a good provider. He's a criminal, I said, the words flat and final, and he's made you all his partners. The colour drained from his face. For a split second, I saw fear in his eyes, raw and undisguised, before the bluster returned. I don't know what you're talking about. You're just upset. Try to think clearly, Hannah, for the children. He turned and walked away, a little too quickly. The encounter left a bitter taste in my mouth, but also a renewed sense of purpose. They were all in so deep, blinded by greed. They had no idea how close to the edge they truly were. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. The days leading up to it were thick with a strange, charged stillness, the proverbial calm before a devastating storm. My family, blissfully unaware of the abyss yawning at their feet, were almost unbearable in their smugness. Naomi paraded a new diamond tennis bracelet at a family acquaintance's birthday lunch, which I'd attended with the kids only to maintain a semblance of normalcy. "A little gift from a dear friend," she'd trilled, catching my eye with a challenging glint. Reuben spoke loudly on his phone about closing a significant property deal, winking at Dalton, who was busy showing off pictures of a sleek, silver sports car he was test driving. Blood money, every last trinket and boast. It made my stomach churn. Davis himself was the epitome of arrogant confidence. He'd taken to sending me brief, condescending texts. "Hope you're preparing the kids for the transition," or "Just want this to be as smooth as possible for everyone." Each message was a fresh jab, but I didn't react. I let him believe he had already won. Let them all bask in their ill-gotten gains and their certainty of my defeat. The Saturday before the hearing, I sat with Phoebe in her office, the city lights twinkling below. We reviewed the final affidavits, the meticulously organised financial documents, Marcus's damning reports. Everything was in place. "The tip to the journalist?" I asked. Phoebe nodded. "An anonymous, encrypted email sent to Amelia Vance at the Financial Chronicle. She's tenacious. The information on Davis's real estate ventures is too juicy for her to ignore. It's time to break the day after the hearing. We want the custody decision clean, based on his unsuitability as a parent and his attempts to suborn your family. Then the rest of his world can implode." A cold satisfaction settled deep in my bones. It was a multi-pronged attack, designed for maximum devastation. That evening, I found myself staring at an old photograph. Me and Dalton, aged about 10 and 8, grinning gap-toothed at a summer fair, grandmama's arm around us both. A wave of an old, almost forgotten affection washed over me, quickly followed by a fresh stab of pain at his betrayal. On impulse, I took a picture of the photo with my phone and sent it to him, my only message. "Is this what Grandmama would have wanted for us, Dalton?" He saw it. The read receipt popped up almost immediately, but there was no reply. Just silence. The last thread of hope I might have unconsciously harboured for him snapped. He'd made his choice. The night before the hearing, Davis played one last desperate card. A police officer appeared at my door, serving me with an emergency temporary restraining order. Davis had fabricated an incident, claiming I'd threatened him, that I was a danger. The TRO meant I wouldn't be allowed in the courtroom. Panic flared, hot and sharp. "He can't do this!" I cried to Phoebe over the phone, my voice shaking. "Calm down, Hannah." Phoebe's voice was a soothing balm of competence. "He can try, but he won't succeed. I'm already on it. This is amateur hour. He's getting sloppy, desperate." True to her word, Phoebe had the TRO quashed by morning. The judge, apparently, was not amused by Davis's blatant attempt to manipulate the court on the eve of the hearing. It was a small victory, but it bolstered my resolve. He was rattled. Good. The morning of the hearing dawned grey and overcast, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple, professional outfit. I needed to look calm, composed, in control, everything Davis and my family were accusing me of not being. Livia arrived to stay with Thomas and Marley, her hug tight and reassuring. "Go get 'em, Han," she whispered. "Burn it all down." Walking into the courtroom felt like stepping into an arena. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my head high, my expression carefully neutral. Davis was already there, huddled with his lawyer, looking supremely confident. My parents and Dalton were seated in the front row of the public gallery, a united front of smug betrayal. As I walked past, Naomi gave me a look that was a sickening blend of pity and contempt. Reuben nodded curtly, his new watch glinting. Dalton wouldn't meet my eyes. I took my seat beside Phoebe. She gave my hand a quick, firm squeeze. "Ready," she murmured. I took a deep breath, the faces of my children flashing in my mind. Thomas's anxious eyes, Marley's trembling lip. This was for them. This was for the years of fear and control. This was for Grandmama's legacy. "Let the show begin," I murmured back, a chillingly calm satisfaction beginning to uncoil within me. The judge entered, and a hush fell over the courtroom. It was time. Davis's lawyer, a slick man named Peterson, with an overly confident smile, went first. He painted a picture of me as an emotional basket case, a neglectful mother on the verge of a complete breakdown. "My client, Mr. Miller," Peterson intoned, his voice oozing false sincerity, "only wants what is best for his beloved children, Thomas and Marley. He fears for their stability, their well-being, in their mother's current erratic state." It was a performance, polished and rehearsed. I sat still, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, focusing on Phoebe's calm profile beside me. Then came the witnesses for Davis. My mother, Naomi, was first. She dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief as she described my supposed mood swings and inability to cope. "I love my daughter," she said, her voice thick with feigned sorrow, "but I have grave concerns. Davis is a rock. He can provide the stable home they need." Lies, every single one. My father, Reuben, followed. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat, but he stuck to the script. He spoke of my financial irresponsibility and lack of focus. He even recounted a fabricated incident where I supposedly left the children unattended, a blatant, easily disproven lie. The new watch on his wrist seemed to tick louder with every falsehood. Dalton was last. He mumbled his testimony, barely looking at anyone, but his words were just as damaging. He spoke of my short temper and how I was always stressed out. He agreed with everything his parents and Davis's lawyer had said. The boy I'd shared secrets and dreams with was gone, replaced by this hollow-eyed stranger. It was nauseating. Watching my own family systematically try to destroy me, their faces masks of false concern, was a unique form of torture. I could feel Davis's smug gaze on me from across the courtroom. He thought he had this in the bag. Then it was Phoebe's turn. She rose, calm and collected, a slim folder in her hand. "Your Honour," she began, her voice clear and precise, "we will demonstrate that the petitioner, Mr. Miller, has engaged in a calculated campaign of manipulation and coercion, and that the testimonies you have just heard are not only false, but were actively solicited through financial inducement." A ripple of surprise went through the courtroom. Davis's lawyer objected. "Speculation, Your Honour." "I believe Ms. Woods has evidence to support her claims," the judge said, her expression stern. "Proceed, Ms. Woods." And Phoebe proceeded. Methodically, piece by piece, she dismantled them. She played the recording of Naomi boasting to her friend about how they'd all be set for life once the mess with Hannah is sorted. Naomi's face went white. Phoebe presented bank statements showing the regular, substantial deposits from Davis into my parents' and Dalton's accounts, coinciding perfectly with key dates in the custody dispute. "Gifts, you claim?" Phoebe asked Reuben, her voice laced with steel. "All payment for services rendered, Mr. Thornton. Services such as perjuring yourself in court." Reuben began to sweat, his earlier confidence evaporating. She produced the email chain between Davis and my father, detailing the financial support in exchange for their cooperation. Davis's confident smirk finally faltered. He leaned forward, whispering urgently to his lawyer. Phoebe wasn't finished. She submitted Marcus's report on Davis's hidden offshore accounts, proving he'd lied about his assets during the divorce. She then introduced the information about the questionable real estate deals. "It appears, Your Honour," Phoebe stated coolly, "that Mr. Miller has not only attempted to defraud this court and his ex-wife, but may also be involved in activities that could attract the interest of federal authorities. And regrettably, it seems he has implicated Ms. Thornton's own family members in these ventures." The judge's expression grew grimmer with each revelation. She looked from Davis to my parents, her eyes like chips of ice. Then Phoebe delivered the final, devastating blow. "Your Honour, there is one more crucial piece of information this court needs to be aware of regarding the financial situation and motivations of Mr. Reuben Thornton, Mrs. Naomi Thornton, and Mr. Dalton Thornton." She paused, letting the anticipation build. "Ms. Hannah Thornton is, and has been for several years, the sole administrator of the Thornton Family Heritage Trust, a significant fund from which her parents and brother are primary beneficiaries." A collective gasp went through the small public gallery. I watched their faces. Davis went pale, then a blotchy, furious red. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. My father stared, slack-jawed, his face turning a ghastly shade of grey. Dalton just shrank into his chair, looking like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. Their smugness, their arrogance, shattered into a million pieces, replaced by pure, unadulterated shock. "And effective immediately, Your Honour," Phoebe continued, her voice ringing with authority as she handed a document to the clerk. "Ms. Thornton has issued a notice freezing all disbursements from said trust to Reuben Thornton, Naomi Thornton, and Dalton Thornton, due to their actions which are demonstrably detrimental to the trust's primary beneficiary, Ms. Hannah Thornton, and by extension, her children." The silence in the courtroom was absolute, broken only by Naomi's strangled sob. The judge looked at me, then at Davis, then at my stunned family. Her decision was swift. "Sole legal and physical custody of Thomas and Marley Miller is awarded to their mother, Ms. Hannah Thornton," she declared. Furthermore, based on the financial irregularities presented, this court orders a full investigation into Mr. Davis Miller's finances and business dealings, and will refer the evidence regarding the real estate ventures to the appropriate authorities. It was over. I had won. More than won. I had obliterated them. As we were leaving the courtroom, the chaos erupting behind us, my mother, her face a mask of desperation, tried to grab my arm. "Hannah!" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Hannah, you can't do this to us. We're family." I pulled my arm away, not even looking at her. I didn't say a word. A chillingly calm satisfaction, cold and pure, settled in my heart. Family? They'd forfeited that right long ago. The courtroom doors swung shut behind me, muffling the sounds of Naomi's frantic pleading and Davis's furious, sputtering protest to his lawyer. Phoebe walked beside me, a small, satisfied smile on her face. "Well," she said, "that was rather effective." "Effective," I agreed, the word feeling like a massive understatement. My legs felt a little shaky, but my mind was clear, sharp. The weight that had been crushing me for so long had finally lifted. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. News of the courtroom drama, the frozen trust fund, and the impending federal investigation into Davis's affairs spread through our social circles and beyond like a wildfire. Amelia Vance's article in the Financial Chronicle, detailing Davis's shady real estate deals and hinting at the family's complicity, hit the newsstands 2 days later, adding fuel to the inferno. My parents' carefully constructed world crumbled. Their new friends acquired through Davis's influence and their sudden influx of cash vanished. Creditors, who had been so patient when Reuben and Naomi were flashing Davis's money, started calling, demanding payment for the designer sofas, vintage wines and luxury cars. The lavish lifestyle they'd so eagerly embraced, built on empty promises and trust fund money they could no longer access, was revealed as a house of cards in a hurricane. The calls started coming to me, of course. First Dalton, his voice a pathetic whine. "Hannah, you have to undo this. Mum and Dad are falling apart. I didn't know it would be like this." "I'll lose the car, Hannah." "That's unfortunate, Dalton," I said, my voice devoid of sympathy. "Perhaps you should have considered the consequences before you decided to sell out your sister and your niece and nephew." I hung up before he could reply. Then came my father, Reuben, attempting a blustering, authoritative tone that quickly deflated into desperate begging. "Hannah, this is madness. You're destroying your own family. Your mother is beside herself. We need that money. You can't just cut us off." "I can, Dad," I replied calmly. "And I have. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them." Click. Naomi's attempts were the most theatrical. Tearful voicemails, dramatic texts proclaiming her undying love for me and the children, blaming Davis for misleading them, conveniently forgetting her own enthusiastic participation. "We can fix this, Hannah. Please just talk to me. We're your parents." I didn't respond to any of them. Their apologies, if you could even call them that, were hollow, self-serving, and far too late. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught. Sorry their gravy train had derailed so spectacularly. Davis, meanwhile, was drowning. His reputation was in tatters. Business partners deserted him. The federal investigation Phoebe had set in motion was gaining traction. His assets frozen, his lawyers scrambling. The man who had tried to paint me as unstable was now the one whose life was publicly imploding. The irony was not lost on me. For me, Thomas and Marley, life began to truly heal. With the court order firmly in place and Davis entangled in his own legal nightmares, the constant threat that had loomed over us was gone. We found a small, sunny house in a new neighbourhood, far from the toxic memories and the prying eyes of our old life. The kids blossomed. Thomas, who had become so quiet and anxious, started cracking jokes again, his laughter echoing through our new home. Marley, my sensitive little girl, stopped having nightmares. She started drawing again, her pictures filled with bright colours and smiling faces. Watching them play in our little backyard, their faces alight with carefree joy, I felt a profound sense of peace. The revenge had been absolute, and yes, the satisfaction was undeniable. It wasn't a gleeful, fist-pumping kind of joy, but a deep, quiet contentment. This wasn't just about punishment, it was about survival. It was about carving out a safe space for my children, protecting them from the poison that had infected our lives for too long. It was about justice, served cold, but oh so satisfyingly. There was no regret for protecting my new family unit, even if it meant severing ties with the one I was born into. Their choices, their greed, their willingness to sacrifice my children's well-being for material gain, those were their burdens to bear. My choice was to fight back, to use the truth as my weapon and the power they had so conveniently forgotten I possessed. The ashes of their greed had quite literally become the foundation of our freedom. Some scars, of course, would always remain. The memory of their betrayal was a dull ache that would likely never fully disappear. But when I looked at Thomas and Marley, thriving, happy, finally safe, I knew I had done what I had to do. They had gambled everything on my silence and Davis's money. They never stood a chance once I decided to use my own voice. And the incredible, far-sighted gift my grandmother had entrusted to me. Their kingdom, built on lies, had crumbled. Ours, built on truth and love, was just beginning.